And let's get more now. We are joined by Andreas Krieg, fellow at the Institute of Middle Eastern Studies at King's College London. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I'd just like to remind everyone that in this U.S.-backed deal, Hamas would need to agree to the release of Israeli hostages, leave power in Gaza, and disarm in return for the release of Palestinian prisoners and an end to the fighting. I mean, this is a virtual surrender for Hamas. How do you expect that it might respond?
It's a very complex situation, as you already said in your little clip there. It's a complete they're kind of between a rock and a hard place, if you think about it. On the one hand, if they don't agree to it, then we will see a continuation of this genocidal war that is obviously a war of annihilation against Palestinian people. On the other hand, if they do agree, it might be the end of the political party and obviously definitely the militant wing in Gaza. But, there might be sort of a gray space here, and I think this is where a lot of it could potentially develop. And obviously, there are divisions within the movement itself. We've got those that are based in Qatar, the political leadership that have shown readiness, and they were prepared in the past to surrender governance to at least a Palestinian and different Palestinian authority. They were able and willing to say that they might even disarm and leave the Gaza Strip if they get amnesty. So there is a readiness there. The problem is whether this can be translated to the ground, whether you obviously have the militant wing that has borne the burden of this conflict for the last 2 years, who now are asked within 3 days to go from 100% counterinsurgency, high-intensity combat to complete dissolution, which is very unlikely. And then you've got the Palestinian Islamic Jihad as well, who are not necessarily linked to Hamas, who think that whatever deal Hamas is agreeing to is not binding to them. So if you put this all together, it's a very sort of complex situation. Right. However, I think the plight of the Palestinian people is something that Hamas understands as something that they want to avoid. They want to avoid further bloodshed.
Yeah, and as you mentioned there, Hamas would argue that this is a genocidal war. Israel obviously would not. It would strongly refute that. Much of Hamas's top leadership, we know, has been wiped out by the Israeli offensive. Where does that leave their negotiating position?
Now, those who are who've resided in Turkey, who are now studying the plan in Qatar, they have limited sway over those on the ground. It's a very difficult, very different political leadership than the one that we've had a couple of years ago that had, a lot of leverage over those on the ground. And I think that will make it so much more difficult. I expect the leadership in Qatar to come back and say, we're willing, because of all the pressure from Muslim and Arab countries, to negotiate this. We will not accept a dictate, but we will accept an amended form of this. And I think there is a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to governance and also when it comes to disarmament.
So then let's talk a little bit about that wiggle room, because I mean, it was very interesting to hear Trump earlier saying that all the Arab nations are on board. But if we really break this down, we're looking at Qatar, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and other Arab countries. They are indeed backing the plan, but they want to work out a final version that includes, and I'm quoting here, full Israeli withdrawal in Gaza, as well as a clear path to a Palestinian state that integrates the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Do you see any scenario where Netanyahu would agree to that?
No, obviously, he's very blunt. He said there will be no Palestinian state and there will be no total withdrawal from Gaza, at least not in the short to mid-term. I think what we need is some sort of clear timeline of what is going to happen. We need to understand how far the IDF is going to withdraw and in what time frame. And these timeframes have to be binding, and we have to have the Trump administration giving guarantees to Hamas that this will eventually happen. Because obviously Hamas is not only agreeing to its dissolution, but also surrender of all its bargaining chips, which are the hostages. So there needs to be a clear pathway for the IDF to withdraw, and then obviously for an international stabilization force to come in. And the pathway to Palestine is something that for the Arab states in particular is extremely important. The idea here is this is a raison de parler. This is a commencement. This is a beginning of a negotiation process that can take different shapes or forms. It's about now making sure that the war ends and then that people can return to their homes, and then we build from there on a political solution. This is as good as it gets. The Qataris were saying to Hamas, this is as good as it gets, and there won't be any better offer on the table.
Andreas Krieg from the Institute of Middle Eastern Studies at King's College London. Thank you.